Granblue Fantasy Relink is an upcoming single-player and multiplayer action RPG based on the turn-based mobile and browser RPG Granblue Fantasy. Relink was first announced back in 2016 during the Cygames Next event in Tokyo, and during its development the scale of the game has increased and the development team has changed. But since the game has been delayed multiple times and information about it is pretty fragmented, fans have been left wondering if it will be worth the wait in the end. It's already been announced that Relink will be releasing worldwide on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 and PC in 2023. And even though the original Granblue Fantasy has only been released in Japan, it already has a fan base from all over the world, which is partially due to its developer Cygames providing a full official English translation of the game, which has made it more accessible to people outside of Japan. But due to how cautious people are towards mobile games, it's an RPG that most fans of the genre have probably overlooked. Relink isn't Cygames' first attempt to bring Granblue to more gamers around the world. Back in 2020, in collaboration with Arc System Works, Cygames released Granblue Fantasy Versus, a competitive fighting game with a cooperative side-scrolling RPG mode. But according to the Granblue series director, Cygames wants Granblue Fantasy Relink to be an RPG that existing Granblue fans will want to play, and a game that will introduce the world of Granblue to console gamers that are reluctant to play mobile games. They want people to experience the world, characters, lore, and gameplay systems that have made Granblue so popular on browser and mobile, but in a way that works best for console and PC players. Granblue Fantasy Relink looks like it will be a fun game to play based on what's been shown in the development videos and trailers, but since I didn't know much about the series, there were still a lot of details that I overlooked or didn't fully understand. So in the middle of December, I started playing the original Granblue Fantasy for myself, which helped me learn more about the world and its characters. I've been playing the game for roughly 10 months now, and now that I'm making my way through some of the higher level content in the game, I have a deeper understanding of how Granblue's gameplay and progression systems work. So in this video, I'll be breaking down all the information I've found about Granblue Fantasy Relink. I'll also be explaining how certain things work in the original Granblue Fantasies to add some additional context. But just keep in mind that this information is based on a game that is currently in development, so there is a chance that everything could still change before release. Granblue Fantasy Relink is an action RPG with two game modes, a single-player main story mode and a quest mode with online multiplayer for up to 4 players. Granblue Fantasy has a world with a lot of history, and a story that has introduced many characters over the past 8 years. Cygames wants people to be able to play Relink without needing any prior knowledge of the backstory, but I believe it will still be beneficial to know who the main characters are. The story of Granblue Fantasy revolves around the crew of the Grand Cypher airship and its captain, who is the protagonist of the game. The main character, known as Gran or Gita, depending on who you choose, receives a letter from their father that left them many years ago to set out on a journey. They decide to follow in their father's footsteps and set out on their own journey in order to find him in the location mentioned in the letter, the legendary island of the Astrals, Estalucia. The dragon Vern is the best friend of the protagonist. Due to the protagonist's parents being absent from their life at a young age, Vern is protected and watched over them since they were a child. Lyria is a mysterious blue-haired girl that knows little of the outside world and is full of curiosity. She has the power to summon and communicate with primal beasts, and because of this, she was being held captive by the Empire so they could use her power as their own. After managing to escape from the Empire, Lyria is discovered by the protagonist in a forest near their village. But soon after, the Empire finds them and the protagonist is fatally wounded while trying to protect her. While watching their life slip away, Lyria decides that the only way to save them is by linking their life force with hers, forever binding their fates together. Catalina is a knight who watched over Lyria while she was being held captive by the Empire. But after growing closer to Lyria, Catalina betrays the Empire and decides to help Lyria escape. Since then, she has become an elder sister figure to Lyria and has sworn to protect her from the Empire. Rackham is an airship expert and the helmsman of the Grand Cypher. After regaining his confidence after a previous accident, he joins the crew and provides them with his ship so they can continue their journey to Estalucia. Io is a young mage that joins the crew while searching for her lost master. She is constantly aiming to improve herself and is now on a journey to bring smiles to the world through her magic. Eugen is a veteran Skyfarer and a mercenary that has traveled alongside Rackham in the past. After meeting the crew, he decides to join them in order to resolve a past regret that he has long avoided. And Rosetta is a mysterious woman that seems to know a great deal about the protagonist's journey. She joins the crew to guide them along the right path, but she doesn't always reveal the full truth of her intentions. In the world of Granblue, the inhabitants known as Sky Dwellers live within the various floating islands of the Sky Realm, and each of these islands have their own beliefs, cultures, and ways of life. The Sky Realm is separated into various areas known as Skydoms, and in an interview with the Granblue Fantasy director, it was mentioned that in the original game, the crew will eventually reach a new Skydom in the main story. They said that Relink will also take place within this Skydom, but its story won't be the same as the one being told in the original game. Instead, it will be a different story that takes place within the same area, similar to a side story. Just because it's said to be similar to a side story, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be less valuable. Compared to the main story in the original game, the frequently added side stories are usually more fun and engaging. Side stories introduce a wider range of characters and give a deeper insight into their backstories. At times, these stories will focus on vital information about the world and its history that isn't mentioned in the main story. So far, we've only been shown extended quest-focused gameplay and a small tour of one of the towns in the game, but not much has been said about what we can expect to do and find within the world. During an interview, it was mentioned that the main story will progress in a linear fashion, with new subquests and islands becoming available as we progress through the chapters. Based on the information that's been revealed so far, it seems like the islands we'll be able to travel to will have sweeping fields, snowy mountain areas, forests, and desert environments. But what is still unclear is how much freedom we'll have while exploring these islands. The main story quests that we've been shown so far are very dramatic and filled with frequent set-piece moments, but during the less intense moments, the party members talk amongst each other about the situations they're in as they make their way to the objective. While making our way through these quests, we'll be expected to avoid hazards in the environment, like evading goblins that are throwing exploding barrels, or attempting to run to the other side of a bridge while it's being destroyed by falling rocks, or even sliding your way to safety to escape from an exploding airship that's falling out of the sky. It also seems like we'll be able to interact with the various objects in the environment to progress through the areas, like lowering a drawbridge so the party can cross to the other side, or using cannons on the side of an airship to shoot down missiles and other airships that are pursuing the party. All of the combat-focused gameplay footage draws to a close with a dramatic boss battle. In the original game, for the most part, gameplay in the story quest usually revolved around defeating multiple waves of enemies or fighting bosses that have their own strengths, weaknesses, and mechanics that you need to overcome. In one of the boss battles in Relink, the crew are fighting on an airship against an enemy general named Galanza. He's a spear-wielding enemy that seems to deal damage in large areas around the battlefield. He charges towards the party using high-speed dash attacks, he shoots shockwaves along the ground that needs to be sidestepped or jumped over to avoid, and as the fight progresses, his armor fuses with his spear and his attacks become more aggressive. Galanza and his army aren't the only enemies we'll be fighting against in Relink. Just like in the original game, we'll also have to go up against powerful entities within the Granblue Fantasy world, known as Primal Beasts. Primal Beasts are living weapons created by the Astrals, the previous conquerors of the Sky Realm, in order to aid them in their domination of the skies. After many years of oppression from the Astrals, the Sky Dwellers banded together and fought back against the Astrals to reclaim their home and send the Astrals back to the Astral Realm. These events took place roughly 500 years before our story begins. Even with the absence of the Astrals, the Primal Beasts still remain within the world and continue to serve the purpose they were created for. Some Primal Beasts have the same physical appearance as the Sky Dwellers and easily live among them undetected. Some are rooted within the floating islands and nourish the land, and others are now seen as gods and are objects of worship. Not all Primal Beasts are hostile, but just like in the original Granblue Fantasy, in Relink we will have to go up against Primal Beasts that oppose the Grand Cypher crew. From what we've been shown, these fights seem to be a spectacle, with the battle becoming much more intense the further into the fight you get. In order to take down the primal beasts and other enemies we'll come across, we'll have to make use of the different features of the combat system. The combat system in Relink has evolved throughout its development, and based on what's been shown in the more recent gameplay videos, it seems like they've settled on the direction they're going for. In Granblue Fantasy Relink, it seems like they're aiming to take the mechanics, systems, and skills that worked for Granblue Fantasy as a 2D turn-based RPG and convert them into what would work best for a 3D action RPG. But many of the features of the original game wouldn't be a great fit for an action-based game, so they're implementing a few new gameplay systems specifically for Relink. Even though there are unique aspects to each character, the core mechanics of the combat system should apply to them all. Pressing the attack button repeatedly will perform a basic combo. This combo can then be modified by pressing the special attack button during the combo, which will change the combo's route. The special attack button can also be used to perform a character's unique attack. For example, Gran and Jita can charge their weapon when holding down the special attack button and release it for a multi-hit finisher. In addition to combos, it's also possible to use a variety of skills. Just like in the original game, character skills fit into different categories. Some are focused on attacking, some are focused on debuffing, and others are there for support or healing. After a skill is used, it will go into a cooldown, and the assigned slot will begin to fill, indicating how much time is left until the skill is recharged. The slots are also color-coded to display the type of skill within the slot, so it's possible to tell which types of skills are available at a glance. When it comes to combat, the original Granblue Fantasy is a party-based game, and it seems like things will be the same in Relink. There were fights in the original game where characters had to act solo, but for the most part it was all about creating a team that had the best synergy for the situation. Granblue Fantasy Relink takes a few of the party-focused gameplay systems that were part of the original game and adds in a few of its own. Link attacks deal critical damage to enemies and can provide the party with buffs. When the party attacks enemies, a blue bar will appear over the enemy's head or specific body parts. Continuously attacking the enemy will deplete the bar, but it quickly regenerates once the attack stops, so players are encouraged to be aggressive with their combos. If the blue bar is depleted, it opens the enemy up to a link attack, allowing party members to leap towards the enemy and perform a special attack that deals critical damage. Each time a link attack is successful, it increases the link level that is displayed on the right-hand side of the screen. The link levels seem to range from 1 to 5, and the higher the link level is, the higher the attack bonus it provides, but this bonus slowly degrades over time. So when fighting enemies, we will need to constantly perform link attacks in order to keep our power boosted. So far we've only been shown link levels that reach level 4, so it's possible that there may be a special condition that needs to be met in order for a party's link level to reach 5. Charge attacks and chain bursts are other gameplay systems that can be enhanced depending on the amount of party members that take part. In the original Granblue Fantasy, each character has a charge bar that charges through various methods during combat. When it's fully charged, it's possible for a character to unleash a unique attack that can deal a large amount of damage and at times provide various enhancements to the character or party. If multiple characters perform a charge attack within the same turn, it will create a chain reaction, dealing additional damage based on the amount of charge attacks that were used within that turn. Charge attacks and chain bursts are also present in Granblue Fantasy Relink. Attacking enemies or taking damage increases a character's charge bar. Once it reaches 100%, it's possible for a character to activate their charge attack. When a character uses a charge attack, other characters can follow up with their own charge attack while the chain chance prompt is displayed to continue the chain. Even if a party member's charge bar isn't completely filled when a chain is started, they still have a chance to join before the chain burst is over, since each charge attack used will also provide a boost to the charge bars of other party members. The charge attacks used will also increase the link level of the party, and as long as 2 or more characters take part in the chain, a chain burst finisher will trigger based on the elemental attribute of the first charge attack used. Not much has been said about the elemental system in Relink, but elemental attributes seem to be present. Gran and Jita's charge attack Tempest Blade is said to be a powerful 3-stage slash with the wind attribute. In the original game, elemental affinities played a huge role in team building. We've been shown chain bursts, character skills, and status effects that seem to be based on various elemental attributes, but there hasn't been enough revealed for me to understand how elemental affinities will work in Relink. It's also possible for characters to support the party by using skills that can buff allies or debuff enemies, like Rosetta's skill which creates plants that can draw the attention of nearby enemies, or Lyria defending the party with a protective barrier during a boss battle. Lyria contains an enormous amount of destructive power, but that power can only be used through the assistance of primal beasts. On her own, she isn't suited for combat, but she does have the ability to use defensive barriers and supportive skills. This trait of hers is also reflected in the way she supports the party in Relink. From what's been shown so far, it seems like Lyria will join the party as a guest character during certain quests. She doesn't take an active role during combat, but she does stay close to the party and functions more like a support character that can provide the party with buffs. In the original game, by using Lyria's power, it's possible to assign and use summons during combat. During an earlier gameplay demonstration, it was shown that Lyria is also able to summon Bahamut in Relink, but I assume her summons will be reserved for specific moments, since it doesn't seem like we'll be able to take control of Lyria directly. With all of the combat options we have, it may seem like battles will end up being a bit one-sided, but there are systems in place that could give certain enemies the upper hand. As stronger enemies continuously take damage, their mode bar will begin to charge. Once the bar is fully charged, the enemy will enter overdrive. While in overdrive, enemies become much more aggressive and use additional special attacks that can cover a larger area. Continuing to attack an enemy that is in overdrive will begin to reduce the mode bar, and once the bar is empty, the enemy will enter break mode, making them briefly fall to the ground and giving allies the opportunity to deal some additional damage while they're vulnerable. Granblue Fantasy Relink uses target lines and ground markers to give players a clearer understanding of where enemies and allies are targeting. With these markers, it will be easier to see where party members are planning to place their buffs or debuffs, so you can adjust your positioning accordingly. Target lines will also appear when enemies are using specific attacks. From what I've seen, target lines are usually displayed by attacks that could possibly hit you while the enemy is not in view of your camera, like when an enemy is using an attack with a bow. For large-scale ground-based attacks, area markers appear on the floor to notify players that they'll need to evade or block an incoming attack. But not all of the ground markers will look the same, and it does seem like some of them overlap, so people will still need to pay attention. If things don't go according to plan on the first attempt, it does seem like there will be a lot of customization options for players to adjust to optimize their party. In the original Granblue Fantasy game, character and weapon customization played a huge role, and based on what's been revealed, it seems like the same will be true for Relink. Compared to the previous games in the series, it seems like Relink will be taking a more traditional approach to customization. Instead of using progression systems that enhance the whole party, it seems like they want to focus on the unique aspects of each individual character. In the original Granblue Fantasy, all characters can be customized in various ways, but the majority of the customization revolved around the main character, their main and sub-weapons, and their summons. Outside of a few specific situations, the main character is a highly customizable, permanent member of your party in the original game. You have the ability to unlock and select from a wide range of classes that can offer new playstyles and fulfill specific roles within your party. In Relink, the main character won't have access to the class system that's available in the original game. Instead, the developers have said that they're making up for this by making each playable character feel unique by giving them their own fighting style. So hopefully this means that players will have an entirely different gameplay experience depending on who they choose to play as. As an example of how they plan to make each character unique, the developers explained how Gran and Jita's new gameplay mechanics work. Within the world of Granblue, Gran and Jita are considered the same character and can be freely switched between in the menu. Along with having a special attack that can charge multiple levels, Gran and Jita's unique mechanic is called Class Arts. Class Arts can boost the effectiveness of skills that Gran and Jita use. As they perform combos, their class level will increase, and the higher the class level is, the stronger their skills become when used. After using a skill, the class level will reset, but this can be built back up again once Gran and Jita perform more combos. The benefit that comes from Class Arts isn't restricted to offensive skills though, since it can also be used on buffs to give them a greater effect, like an extended duration. Just like what was shown in the demonstration, we'll be able to practice the combos and skills for all characters on the trial mode training dummy. This dummy was also present in the original game for people to test their builds and party setups in different situations. From what's been shown in the trailers, it doesn't seem like you'll necessarily need to always be in control of the main character throughout the story. In the original Granblue Fantasy, story-related characters can be obtained while progressing through the main story, and there are also over 70 characters that can be obtained from side stories, more can be recruited by completing specific objectives and content, and some can be earned from limited time crossover events. But the majority of the characters are obtained through the gacha system, by spending crystals earned in-game, or by spending real money. Based on what's been announced so far, this doesn't seem to be the direction they're taking with Relink, at least for the characters that have already been announced. In an interview, it was mentioned that the plan is to make characters unlockable through story progress in Relink, and the characters that you unlock can be customized and upgraded for use in the story and multiplayer modes. Apart from the main story characters that I mentioned earlier, the characters that have been revealed for Relink so far are the Dragon Knights Lancelot, Vayne, Percival and Siegfried, the leader of the Holy Knights Charlotta, and the Wandering Swordsman Yordara. Very early on in Relink's development, Ferry and Metera were also revealed. They appeared as playable characters in Granblue Fantasy Versus, but not much has been said about their Relink appearance since their initial reveals. But the Granblue series director did mention in an interview that these characters and many more are hiding behind the scenes and will reappear in the game. They haven't announced how many characters we will be able to play as once Relink is available, but they did say that the characters so far are in the double digits, and that adding more via DLC is definitely something they're planning. While in town, it's possible to form a party with your currently unlocked characters, configure their skills and equipment, and view information like character stats and a breakdown of their charge attacks and passive abilities that make the character unique. At first glance, the equipment system in Relink may seem completely different to the one in the original game, but it's possible that they could have a lot more in common than expected. Characters in Relink can be equipped with a weapon, and they can also be equipped with multiple enhancements referred to as wells that can be placed into specific slots on the character. The original game used a weapon-focused system that let the main character equip a main weapon and an additional 9 sub-weapons that could provide the whole party with their stats and additional enhancements known as weapon skills. Each individual weapon and their weapon skill can be upgraded to improve their effectiveness. The same seems like it will be true in Relink. Based on what's been shown so far, it still seems like it's possible for weapons to have skills in addition to the basic stats they provide. Worlds also provide various enhancements to the character and can be placed into available slots in order to receive their bonuses. Worlds seem to have tiers based on rarity, and from what we've been shown, they can boost the character's attack or provide various bonuses when specific conditions are fulfilled, like having a certain amount of remaining health. In the demonstration video, Worlds had 3 slots that they could be placed into, but it does look like there is space for additional slots, so it could be possible that more will become available as you progress through the game. In the original game, upgrading the various aspects of your party often required a lot of materials that were dropped in quests or from bosses. In Relink, it's been shown that enemies and bosses can drop various items, some of which could be materials necessary for crafting or upgrading equipment. The enhancement and progression systems haven't been explained in detail yet by the developers, but it does seem like weapons and wells can be upgraded, so depending on how this system is implemented, it could lead to a huge amount of customization for characters. With all this upgrading and enhancing that we could potentially be doing, we'll need some way to effectively gather the materials that we need. Granblue Fantasy is known for being grindy, and in the original game, people tend to spend most of their time in multiplayer hunting for weapons and upgrade materials. And based on what's been revealed so far, it seems like once people are done with the main story in Relink, multiplayer could be where they'll be spending most of their time too. Relink's quest mode is aimed at people that have finished the main story and are looking for more challenging long-term content. In this mode, it's possible for up to 4 players to form a party and take on quests, but it's also possible to do these quests alone with computer-controlled party members. New multiplayer quests will become available as we progress through the chapters of the main story, so everyone will have an additional way to level up their characters and obtain items during and after finishing the main story. The same can be said of the original game. When people are not participating in story content or events, they will most likely be progressing through the multiple tiers of multiplayer raid battles that can drop new weapons or necessary materials and accessories that can be used to further enhance their characters. In the original Granblue, there's a heavy emphasis on co-op play. They managed to combine turn-based RPG and MMO gameplay systems to create a multiplayer mode where up to 30 players can team up to take down raid bosses that have various phases and mechanics to overcome. Co-op seems like it will play a big role in Relink 2, and it's been a core part of the plans for the game since its initial announcement back in 2016. The towns in the game act like lobbies where you can team up with players online to take on quests. In the lobbies, everyone can use emotes, stamps, and basic phrases to communicate with each other. We'll be able to use any of our currently unlocked characters to take part in quests. Quests can be selected at the quest counter, and once you've decided on a quest, it will display the objective, success and failure conditions, and completion rewards. A rank is also displayed, but it's still not clear what it's referring to. It's possible that it's a player ranking system that's independent of your character levels. In the original game, after reaching certain player rank milestones, new raids become available and new features and gameplay systems are unlocked. This could also be the case with Relink. For the quest in the multiplayer gameplay demonstration, the party is tasked with searching for a missing airship that apparently crash-landed after being attacked by monsters. The flow of the quest that was shown seems to be pretty straightforward. The party fights their way through various enemies in a fairly linear area with a few small side paths that lead to treasure chests and items. Traveling to the objective didn't take them much time, but the main focus of this quest definitely seems to be the boss battle against the Ancient Dragon once they find the stranded airship at the end of the area. The Ancient Dragon is the largest boss enemy that's been revealed so far. From what's been shown, it's possible to target the dragon's various body parts to reduce its link bar, so link attacks can be performed by the group. Charge attacks also seem to knock it off balance, which makes it easier to land follow-up attacks. But just like the other bosses that have been shown, once it goes into overdrive, the fight completely changes, and the Ancient Dragon's attacks become much more aggressive and can cover a larger area. During this quest, it seemed like the developers wanted to showcase some of the team play that can take place during multiplayer. In the earlier sections of the gameplay demonstration, Vayne can be seen using his taunt skill to get the attention of enemies in the area so everyone else can focus on dealing damage. While fighting the Ancient Dragon, the Vayne player was also shown to be using a sticker to warn the other party members to gather around him, so he can use his Rampart defensive skill to protect everyone from the dragon's fire. A sticker was also used by the Siegfried player to let everyone know that he is starting a chain burst. And when the Lancelot player goes down, Percival uses X Seal on the dragon to petrify it and slow it down for a few seconds, and Vayne uses Breakthrough to taunt the dragon to keep his attention away from the group, while Siegfried helps the Lancelot player recover. Once the fight is over, just like in the original game, the boss drops treasure chests that contain various rewards. As of right now, the max player count for a quest is 4. But implementing a raid system similar to the one that was present in the original game where multiple separate parties work together to take down a boss that has a shared health bar could be something that they're planning for certain battles in Relink. Nothing about that has been hinted at yet, it's just purely speculation based on what's present in the mobile and browser version of Granblue Fantasy. In a Cygames magazine interview, the Granblue Fantasy development team acknowledged that the original Granblue game has a lot of content for people to dig into, but they also mentioned that for Relink, the story mode and multiplayer mode are equally important, and they plan on providing a lot of content for both. They also mentioned that they think there will be the equivalent of 2 games worth of content available, and they say that they've spent time working on the playable stages so that players will barely see the same terrain or backdrops twice. This could be a bit of an exaggeration based on how much effort they feel they put into working on the game, but I'm sure once we get our hands on Relink, we'll know for sure. I personally hope that what they're saying is true, since Granblue Fantasy Relink is the type of RPG that I've been waiting to play for a while. Over time, Cygames have gained more experience as developers, and the original game has vastly improved in terms of progression, gameplay systems, and storytelling. Since Relink has been developed and rebuilt alongside the original Granblue for almost 7 years now, after taking all the improvements and learning experiences into consideration, there's a good chance that Relink could become something great. But it's also fair for people to be concerned about a console game coming from a development studio that on the surface doesn't seem to have that much experience when developing console games. The development team at Cygames have worked on console games in the past, but none of those games seem to be as large scale as Relink is expected to be. They've announced a few games that seem like large-scale projects, but outside of their initial announcements, not much else about them has been said. So one of their biggest challenges will be to convince people that they have what it takes to make large-scale games for console and PC, and reassure people that have lost interest after waiting for so long that their games will be worth the wait. I'm already working on the next video, and I'll be continuing to make even more high-quality, in-depth videos about upcoming action games and RPGs. If there are no further delays, Granblue Fantasy Relink is expected to release on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and PC in 2023. It's been announced that Relink will be localized into English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish, but it's currently still unknown if there are plans for it to be localized into other languages. In the most recent delay announcement, it was mentioned that we will learn more about the game in December, but the Granblue Fest event that usually shares new information about Relink will now be taking place in January 2023. A Granblue Fantasy livestream is apparently happening in December, so hopefully they'll share new information about Relink there instead. But if any other important news about the game pops up, I'll be sure to let you know. So take a look in the description or in the pinned comment for links to all the places you can find me. I'll be making some new videos for Granblue Fantasy Relink and other upcoming RPGs very soon, but until I make those videos, I'll see you all later.